Hey, what's good, everybody? I'd like to welcome you all to a brand new video on my channel. And today we're going to be doing an album review, the latest album from Rob Zombie called the Lunar Injection Kool Eclipse Conspiracy, which was released on March the 12th of 2021 on Nuclear Blast Records. And this is the first album that we've gotten from Rob Zombie in 5 years. His previous record was released in 2016 called The Electric Warlock Acid Witch Satanic Orgy Celebration Dispenser. So hey, try to remember that whole title if you can. But there were 3 singles released from this recent album, the Lunar Injection Kool Eclipse Conspiracy, and those are The Triumph of King Freak, The Eternal Struggles of the Howling Man, and Crow Killer Blues. So let's get into this album review and let's see, is this the best Rob Zombie album that he's put out since the first 2 records? So we're going to dive into some positives that I really picked up on when listening to this record. So the first one is that this is the heaviest album that Rob Zombie has put out probably since his first 2 records, Hellbilly Deluxe and The Sinister Urge. And that was something that I really dug when I heard the first single, The Triumph of King Freak. That heaviness had been brought back into the fold of his sound. You know, the more industrial groove metal based riffs are there. You know, his more aggressive vocal tone, very eerie and dark. You know, the somewhat sometimes cheesy shot rock subject matter that's, influenced by B horror movies. All that is back into play with this record. So you could say that this is a bit of a return to form for Rob and the band. And, while sticking to the typical, Rob Zombie shtick, they also touch on a bit of new territory on this record on a lot of the songs. They actually dive into some funky rhythms on a few tracks. There's some hip-hop influence sounds here and there. And there's even some country / bluegrass elements on a particular song here on this album. So they keep it with the typical Rob Zombie fashion, but they also experiment with the sound and they touch on new territories. So let's dive into the negatives. There's not too many negatives, but I think the biggest one is that there's way too many interludes on this album. And I know that interludes are a big part of Rob Zombie's solo records, but there's 7 interludes on this record. 7 interludes, and it seems like there's an interlude every 1 or 2 tracks. And speaking upon the interludes, a lot of these interludes sounded like wasted potential. Some of these sounded like they could have been fleshed out more into more full-fledged songs. Some examples would be the intro called Expanding the Head of Zed. A real cool intro, especially when it comes in with that kind of pulsating, somewhat danceable beat, and there's the whole hallelujah chant that's going on in the background. You're really expecting for something very heavy to like just drop in and just kick off the album, but no, it's just a little short intro, and then it goes into the Triumph of King Freak. And then there's the song where John 5 does a acoustic solo. It's about a 2-minute long acoustic solo. I honestly feel that could have been fleshed out into possibly a ballad. And when I say a ballad, I don't mean a sappy love song by any means. I mean something that would have been in typical Rob Zombie fashion, something that would have been eerie and very dark and twisted, typical of what the band's approach is. And that's really the biggest negatives that I have about this record, is that there's just way too many interludes and they were wasted potential. I feel that a lot of them could have just been fleshed out into full-length songs. There's even one interlude on here that has this sort of funky industrial hip-hop type beat that I thought would have made a great song, and it really would have showed some diversity and a lot of dynamics in what Zombie is doing with his sound now. It would have been more of them taking on new territory as well. And one minor negative, and it's not really a big one, but some of the subject matter is a bit cheesy. It comes off a bit cheesy at times, and that's really not a big deal. That's something that's been prominent in most of Zombie's work anyway. And you have to understand, most of these songs are influenced by B horror movies. So that's where a lot of the subject matter comes from. And let's move on to some key songs on this album that I particularly enjoy. So let's talk about the first single that came out, The Triumph of King Freak. Really dug this. A lot of people was really impressed by this as a first single because it was a return to that heavy groove metal riffs and the slight industrial metal elements. Excuse me. And not only that, but the added mix of hip hop and funk rhythms. There's a breakdown. There's a couple of breakdowns in the song. The first breakdown goes into what sounds a bit similar to a Beastie Boys influenced hip hop breakdown. And then towards the end, it goes into this somewhat funky rhythm. John 5 comes in and starts laying down these groovy, funky guitar licks, which I thought was really cool and something that I've never heard on previous Rob Zombie albums. I know a particular channel called Thralls of Metal that reviewed this album. They talked about how a lot of the songs make you want to headbang, then they transition into these funky grooves that make you want to shake your booty. And that's a perfect way to sum up this song and most of the records on this album. And then we have 18th Century Cannibals / Ghost Train. I'm just going to call this song Ghost Train for short. This is probably one of my favorite songs on the album. It's one of the most interesting tracks on here because majority of the song is a bluegrass song. It's a traditional bluegrass song during the verses. But then when it gets to the chorus part, it transitions into this heavy industrial rock or industrial metal. This very pounding industrial metal song, which I thought was really cool. And then Rob Zombie uses his like kind of country western type voice. He really doesn't sing on the song. It's more kind of like him talking and having a conversation in a country accent. But I just thought that was real amazing how they smoothly transitioned from basically a traditional bluegrass song to this massive heavy industrial metal chorus. It was a really cool song that really sticks out to me, and just a perfect blend of those two contrasting genres as well. And then another one of my favorites on here is The Eternal Struggles of the Howling Man. And this song is very reminiscent of Supercharger Heaven from White Zombie's Astro Creep album. It has the same fast speed metal tempo, heavy riffs, and there's just moments on that song where I'm expecting to hear Rob Zombie start chanting Devil Man like he did in Supercharger Heaven. This song is very reminiscent of Supercharger Heaven from Astro Creep. And that's another thing about this album. You can tell that possibly Rob and the band members were taking influences from some of the White Zombie era as well as those first two solo albums, while also, touching on different types of new styles that I've never heard personally them play on other albums. And then we get to Boom Boom Boom, which is, I would say, the slowest track on this record. Really dig the slow, gloomy, almost somewhat kind of doomy stoner rockish vibe that this record has. It's heavy, it's dark, it's eerie, and it just has this very slow kind of bluesy hard rock style that I really dig. One of the standouts on the record. And then Get Loose, which I would say Get Loose is probably the most purest industrial metal song. This sounds like something that could have easily fitted on Hellbilly Deluxe 1 or even The Sinister Urge. It just has that vibe. It makes you want to headbang. It makes you want to dance. Just the all right. To me, this song is just right out of the playbook of Hellbilly Deluxe or The Sinister Urge. And then we get to the final single, which I think is the final single for the album. I don't know if they're going to drop another one, but Crow Killer Blues, which I would say is the heaviest track on this record. And it was a great way to end the album. They ended it on a really cool, heavy number. Some very heavy groove metal riffs. I like the vocal effect on Rob Zombie's voice on his during the singing on this song, because he's using that sort of like alien kind of monster vocal effect that he used on Triumph of King Freak, and it was just a solid ending to the record. There were a few moments where I felt that the album kind of lost me a little bit. One song in particular called "Shake Your Ass, Smoke Your Grass." I will admit that this is a bit of a catchy song. It's more of a hard rock number, but it's probably one of the more weaker songs on the album. It's not terrible. It's not a song where if I hear it come on, I want to immediately turn. I want to really skip to the next song or anything of that nature. But it's not a standout. It's very simple, but I will commend them for making a simple song be very catchy, because there are times where I could be at work or I could be at home walking through the house, and that chorus, like "shake your ass, smoke your grass," is kind of going around and around in my head. And "Shadow of the Cemetery Man," it's not a terrible track either. I do like how they return to more of that more industrial rock, industrial metal flavor, but it's not really a song that sticks out that much. But for the most part, I think that this is a solid album. In conclusion, I think this is a solid album from Rob Zombie. I don't know if I would call it one of his best albums just yet. I do know that he and as well as the band, it was a bit of a return to form, because you can really tell that they were taking influences from White Zombie as well as the early Zombie albums, and they were also able to, like, I guess you could say, update the sound and then actually try to get into new territories, especially with that bluegrass song and so forth. Man, I would say this is probably Rob Zombie's most interesting album thus far, and I think it was a solid release. And I'm actually glad that I went back and reassessed this record, because when I initially bought this album when it first came out, I really didn't like it all that much. I thought it was very underwhelming. I really didn't think that it lived up to the hype per se. But now that I've gone back and really listened to this album multiple times over and over, I've managed to find all sorts of gems and things that I like about this record. And this is definitely way better than the previous record. It's way better than the Electric Satanic Witch Orgy, whatever that previous record was called. This is way better than that, because this album right here sounds like the record that the band wanted to make. I always felt that the previous album was a bit of a rush job, that they just wanted to put out music just to have something out there. This sounds like the band really went in the studio. They took their time on writing the music and wanting to put out something a bit more quality. And that's what I really like about this record. Although it did take me a few listens and it took me having to step away from it for a little bit and coming back to it to really appreciate what this band has put out recently. So as far as how I feel, how does it fit with the first two records of Hellbilly Deluxe and The Sinister Urge? Because I see a lot of people comparing it with those records, or even putting it up there. I really don't know if I want to put it up there as far as like being as good as those first two albums. But I think, or I will say in my personal opinion, that this album sounds like the record that should have came out after The Sinister Urge. That's my personal opinion. Educated Horses, I understand, was a different direction. It was more of a hard rock album, so to speak, but it was really lacking on the heaviness in a lot of ways, as well as the preceding albums that came after that. I mean, those records were somewhat of a return to it, but this album right here really is that return to form, that return to the B horror movie subject matter, that just heavy groove metal, industrial metal, and that twisted weirdness that we all come to expect from Rob Zombie. It's all on this record. So I think it is a very solid record in Rob's discography. And yeah, like I said, I think this is the record that really should have came out after The Sinister Urge. And as far as like reviews that I've heard, most people seem to really enjoy this record. and I understand why now that I've gone back and reassessed it. But in anyway, don't just take my word for it, because this is merely just my opinion. But I really enjoy this album now, and I've been listening to it constantly for the past 2 or 3 days, and I'm enjoying it more and more with each listen. So definitely go and pick up the album, stream it, whatever you use, whatever platforms you use to listen to your music. Definitely go check this album out, and let me know in the comment section what you think about this album. What's your opinion? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? I'm very much open to hearing what everybody else's opinions about this record is. But I definitely think this was a solid release from the band. They're definitely heading in the right direction. So I'm most definitely anticipating what they're going to come out with next, whenever their next album will come out. Because who knows when that would be, because it looks like Zombie is getting back into making films again. But I hope we don't have to wait too long for another album, because I'm really anticipating what they're going to come up with next, because this was an interesting listen, and I'm glad that I went back and gave it another shot. So I hope you guys enjoyed this album review. Rob Zombie, the Lunar Injection Kool-Aid Eclipse Conspiracy, which is out now, released on Nuclear Blast Records. Definitely go to your local record stores, pick this up, Spotify, wherever you can consume your listening pleasure. Definitely go and pick this album up. I think that you will enjoy it. And as always, I appreciate everybody that is supporting the channel. I've seen that I've got a few new subscribers. A shout out to all you new subscribers. Shout out to all the long-time subscribers who've still been holding me down, even when I went to that period where I wasn't making a lot of videos. And if you come across this video, please hit that thumbs up, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos. I got tier lists. I got albums ranked. I got a few podcast episodes. Yeah, definitely show me some support if you want to. And as always, hope everybody has a blessed day and a blessed week. And as always, love, peace, and music. Peace out.